The top stories tonight in Y News. There are opposing sides to the issue of reduced physical distancing on public transport here in the country. Now, according to the presidential spokesperson, Harry Roque, Duterte might announce his decision on this measure.
Dahil ang mga doktor, iba-iba rin po ang pananaw. Wala pong isang opinyon pagdating dito sa pagbawas ng isang dangkal lang naman na social distancing sa pampublikong mga transportasyon.
Authorities are still mulling over permitting the operation of provincial buses coming from Metro Manila. Meanwhile, provincial bus operators are in favor of the proposed point-to-point trips.
The investigation on the alleged widespread corruption in PhilHealth is far from over. Meanwhile, the Department of Health considers it a welcome development that its chief has been spared from the raps amid the PhilHealth mess. The Department of Education calls on parents to help them prevent the so-called distance cheating when online classes begin.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday declared the dawn of a new Middle East as he presided over the signing of two historic Middle East diplomatic deals between Israel and two Gulf nations.
And plane cafes in Thailand take off. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Wednesday, September 16, 2020. I am William Theo.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website untvweb.com. I am Mariela Toza.
First in the news, there are opposing sides to the issue of reduced physical distancing on public transport here in the country. Now, according to the presidential spokesperson, President Rodrigo Duterte might announce his decision on this measure tomorrow. Our Malacan correspondent, Rosalie Cos, will tell us why live. Yes, Rosalie, good evening.
Yes, good evening, William. The Interagency Task Force Against COVID-19 extensively discussed reduced physical distancing on public transportation for 6 hours yesterday. According to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, a group of doctors has opposing positions on the issue. There are some who say a 1-meter physical distance between passengers should be maintained. There are others who say that reduced social distance is possible while maintaining health measures, such as wearing a face mask and a face shield, maintaining good personal hygiene, no eating, no talking, and no using of mobile phone when on public transport. President Rodrigo Duterte will make his final decision on this matter if he would let reduced physical distancing on public transport continue or if he would maintain the strict 1-meter distance. Malacan says it is possible the president will announce his decision tomorrow. Let's listen to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque.
Rekomendasyon ng IATF nakabase po sa siyensya at nakabase po sa advice ng mga doktor. So ang rekomendasyon po ay susumite kay Presidente. Si Presidente na po ang magde-decide.
William?
Rosalie, is reduced physical distancing on public transportation suspended pending the president's decision?
William, according to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, it is still being implemented since it was approved during last week's IATF meeting. Until the president revokes it, it will still be implemented.
Thank you, Rosalie Cos, for that report.
The enhanced contact tracing efforts of local government units have an impact on the country's daily case count, according to the DOH. Meanwhile, the Health Department emphasizes that the Philippine government will not pay in advance for a COVID-19 vaccine. Aiko Miguel tells us why.
In the past 7 days, the daily case count of coronavirus infection in the country has been around 3,000 or more. According to the DOH, besides cases resulting from delayed reporting of laboratories, the department also records new clusters of COVID-19 transmission in communities. 5 new clusters have been recorded in Calabarzon, while 4 more have been found in Bulacan. The Health Department also reports the surge in cases is attributed to the enhanced contact tracing efforts of local governments, which makes identifying and finding cases faster.
Lang usually ang nakocontact trace nila and within the household lang. Ngayon, it has increased to 10. 1:10 ang nagagawa na ng ating mga local governments and it has gone beyond the households already. So mas marami silang nakikitang contacts, mas marami silang natetest.
The DOH also refutes a report that some contact tracers are not paid their 3 to 4 months' salary.
Mali ang impormasyon, hindi yan contact tracers. Mga encoders po namin yan. Hindi po kami kumuha ng contact tracers sa central office. We already have created a team to specifically focus on this. And our objective is for the encoders to have their salaries in these next 2 weeks.
Meanwhile, according to the Department of Health, the World Health Organization is considering 34 potential vaccines that will be part of the COVID-19 vaccine trials. 9 of these are on clinical trial phase 3 and the rest are on clinical trial phase 2. The Philippine government is continuously negotiating with vaccine manufacturers, but the DOH emphasizes that the government will not give advance payment to vaccine manufacturers unless a certain vaccine is approved and evaluated by experts and by the country's Food and Drug Administration.
Kailangan nakalagay dun sa batas pagka magde-deliver na at na-receive natin yung goods, tsaka tayo magbibigay ng ating bayad. Of course, hindi naman po tayo magpapahuli. Nakikipag-usap po tayo sa lahat ng manufacturers. Tinitingnan natin kung paano tayo mas magkakaroon ng advantage para makaka-access tayo ng mas maayos dito sa mga bakunang ito.
Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Authorities are still mulling over permitting the operation of provincial buses coming from Metro Manila to resume. Meanwhile, provincial bus operators are in favor of the proposed point-to-point trips. Joanne Nano tells us why.
In an online press briefing today, Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board Chairman Martin Delgres said they are in close coordination with local government units and provinces on allowing buses coming from Metro Manila to resume their operations. However, only 4 provinces out of 81 they have talked with allow the entry of people from the National Capital Region, according to Attorney Delgra. These are Antique, Quirino, Isabela, and Bataan.
Marami po sa kanila ang ayaw pa na magbukas ng border, lalong-lalo na doon sa rota na manggagaling sa Metro Manila. So that is really our main concern. Whatever be the case, we need to closely coordinate with the LGU concerned, because at the end of this trip, at the end of every trip, it is the LGU who will receive the passengers, who will manage the passengers in their respective jurisdictions.
Delgra added some local government officials are also proposing to create a point-to-point system for provincial bus trips. This is because of differences in the policies and protocols imposed by localities.
Hindi lang po yung kung saan babiyahe at saan pupunta at saan din po dadaan. Kaya nga po yung sinasabi ng league, kung papayagan man na bubukas yung isang probinsya, sabihin natin somewhere in Northern Luzon, at yung mga probinsya na dadaanan hindi pa papayag, hindi rin po pwede na meron din yung tinatawag na bus stops along the way, no? So they are suggesting na parang point-to-point na rin po yung pagbabiyahe.
The Provincial Bus Operators Association has earlier appealed to the government to allow them to resume their trips even with a limited capacity. In a text message, Alex Yage, president of the Provincial Bus Operators Association, says they are in favor of the proposed point-to-point trips but warns that multiple transfer of trips could result in further transmission of COVID-19. Joan Nano, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, Malacan does not expect positive comments from Vice President VP Robredo on the government's COVID-19 response. This is in reaction of presidential spokesperson Harry Roque when asked about the statement of the Vice President saying that even if Health Secretary Francisco Duque III is removed from his post, problems will persist because the national government has no system in place against COVID-19. VP Robredo also stated that the Philippines has to improve its 30,000 COVID-19 test capacity. The palace graded the government's COVID-19 response as 85% because of its increased testing capacity. Also, the country has been able to prevent millions of COVID-19 infections due to the enforcement of coronavirus lockdowns.
Of course, nothing will ever be enough for someone na hindi nakakakita ng kahit anong mabuti sa pamahalaan.
Meanwhile, the country's Department of Health says that 3,550 new cases were reported today, raising the total confirmed cases of coronavirus infection in the Philippines to almost 273,000. The most new cases were recorded in the National Capital Region with close to 1,500. Rizal logged 271 new patients, while Cavite, Bulacan, and Laguna all posted nearly 200 cases each. We have lost 69 more patients, but through our fervent prayers, medical interventions, and sacrifices of our medical frontliners, 524 more people have won their battle against the invisible enemy. Now we have total recoveries of 207,858. Thanks be to God.
Let's now take a closer look at the updated count of coronavirus cases around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has now reached a total of almost 29.6 million confirmed cases in 188 countries, regions, and sovereignties. The fast-spreading disease has claimed more than 935,000 lives, while over 20 million patients across the globe have recovered from the new coronavirus infection. Thanks be to God.
The investigation on the alleged widespread corruption in the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, or PhilHealth, is far from over. Dante Amento tells us why.
Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara says their composite teams will continue their probe after Task Force PhilHealth submitted its initial report to the President. Secretary Guevara adds they will give 30 days for the composite teams to finish their investigation and then prepare for possible complaints if there is enough evidence. The investigation will start as newly installed PhilHealth President Attorney Dante Gueran formally assumes his post this week. The composite teams aim to investigate particularly PhilHealth's legal and IT sectors, which are also allegedly involved in graft practices. Meanwhile, former PhilHealth Chief Ricardo Morales Camp strongly denies the allegation of irregularities. His spokesperson, Attorney Arnedo Valera, says that his client is a man of integrity. He adds they are ready to answer charges that may be filed against Morales. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Department of Health considers it a welcome development that its chief has been spared from the raps amid the PhilHealth mess. Our health correspondent Aiko Miguel tells us why.
The country's Department of Health hopes that because of the President's decision on Health Secretary Francisco Duque III, the entire department could work more as their worries about the PhilHealth issues have been allayed.
Nagpapasalamat po kami sa ating Pangulo, no, na nabigyan po ng ganitong trust ang ating Secretary of Health. We are very grateful And hopefully from here on, we can continue to work and mas panatag po ang ating pagtatrabaho dahil nagkaroon naman po tayo ng ganitong welcome development dito po sa ating mga issues.
Undersecretary Vergere added, it is also difficult on their part to change leadership while the country is facing a pandemic.
As we always say, mahirap po magpalit ng ating mga liderato kapag nasa gitna po na po tayo ng ating sitwasyon dito sa pandemic. It's really hard to have this kind of shift kapag po tayo ay meron ng ganitong sitwasyon.
The DOH also welcomes any investigation since issues began. Even Health Secretary Francisco Duque III supports the government's measure to investigate and sanction those proven liable for anomalies.
Ang Kagawaran ng Kalusugan, pati si Secretary Duque has always reiterated that he supports this kind of moves. No? So kung sakasakaling mapapatunayan sa proper court of law na talagang may mga issues tayo or gaps ang ating mga opisyal, yung mga nararapat na sanctions ay dapat ibigay. So, suportado ito ni Secretary Duque.
Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
DepEd is almost 100% ready for its printed self-learning modules for the first quarter of school year 2020-2021. Meanwhile, despite the pandemic, DepEd's feeding program will continue for learners identified last year as wasted and severely wasted. Arlene Delgado reports why.
It is only less than a month before classes for the upcoming school year opens on October 5. In today's hearing of the Senate Committee on Basic Education, Arts and Culture, the Department of Education said that over 730 million or 98% of printed self-learning modules for the first quarter of school year 2020 to 2021 are ready for distribution. More than 25,000 out of 42,000 public schools in the country have already distributed modules to learners. Meanwhile, the total enrollment is now at 24 million or 88% of last year's 27 million total enrollees. For the television learning modality, the department is targeting to produce 130 episodes per week.
We have correspondingly mobilized around 72 production staff. This includes producers, illustrators, videographers, and even composers who will support these 107 teacher broadcasters in producing episodes.
Committee on Basic Education Chair Senator Sherwin Gatchalian said that based on his assessment, the TV and radio modality is only 40% ready, but he expects that the national TV and radio program will be fully ready before October 5. Meanwhile, DepEd will continue its weekly feeding program through household delivery or school pickup to lessen the risk of contracting COVID-19. From the usual provision of hot meals, a rationing of nutritious food products in coordination with the National Nutrition Council will be given to incoming kindergarten learners and grade 1 to grade 6 learners identified as undernourished last year.
This poses to the department additional challenges with respect to the distribution, but we believe that this is an important support by the national government that cannot stop also as much as learning cannot stop at this time. In fact, it becomes a two-pronged program, not just a matter of educational support, but also a social amelioration as of this time.
Arlene Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Education calls on parents to help them prevent the so-called distance cheating this school year 2020 to 2021. Dante Amento tells us why.
Instead of giving periodical exams 4 times a year, the Department of Education says it will dispense a school assessment program and give written performance tasks instead amid the implementation of distance learning. DepEd Undersecretary for Curriculum and Instruction Diosdado San Antonio explains this will also help prevent distance cheating among learners.
While we are trying to also find ways of making sure na yung distance cheating is avoided, ang pinakauna yata ay talagang makaunawa ang lahat na hindi dapat mahalaga yung mataas na score, mas mahalaga yung natututunan ng bata.
USEC San Antonio underscores the importance that parents monitor their children during online classes because teachers cannot monitor them in person. Parents should always remind their children of honesty, the official adds.
Kung sa bahay ay gusto mong maging honest yung anak, ay katulong ka sa pagsagawa ng dishonest output, that will be very detrimental to our efforts in shaping good Filipino. So paalala na rin po ito na pagkakataon natin ang home-based learning na ito para turuan ng mga bata ng mga tamang values.
Meanwhile, a group of private schools appreciates the plan to temporarily remove periodical exams to lessen the learner's burden. Oral recitations and assignments can be used as basis for the students' grades. Federation of Associations of Private Schools Administrators President Ilyasardo Casilag says they will also suggest this to their member schools.
Ang pagkukunan ng grades dyan, pwede yung performance niya sa klase, no? It could even be oral, no? Pagka grade 5, grade 6 up to high school, lalo na sa senior high, pwede na essay eh.
Damtiamento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Commission on Higher Education, or CHED, is studying the impact of online classes on students. Meanwhile, higher education institutions are preparing for possible face-to-face classes next year. Ray Pelayo tells us why.
Deputy Speaker Dan Fernandez is asking the Commission on Higher Education to formulate a parameter for online classes that will instill discipline in students even if they attended classes at home. The lawmaker mentioned his appeal during the hearing on CHED's 2021 budget with the House Committee on Appropriations. Fernandez cited a conversation with his son.
Nakikinig po siya, kumakain, nagkukwentuhan kami. And I asked him, ano ba yung pinakikinggan mo? Sabi ko dun sa anak ko, sabi niya sa akin, Dad, nag-online class ako. Ha? Nag-online class ka? Okay, o sige. So, kain kami. Tapos, di na ako nagsalita and then I went outside.
Fernandez is worried how students could learn or absorb lessons during the online class amid a lot of distractions.
Is it possible na maging mandatory na kapag ang Zoom classes ay kung isang oras po yan, isang oras naka-video in po yung ating mga estudyante.
CHED Chairperson Prospero de Vera said the impact of online classes on students' behavior should be taken seriously. They are now conducting a study on this.
May mga pag-aaral ho na pag pinilit mo yung bata na talagang 2-3 oras siya, may epekto din do sa kalusugan niya. So we have to adjust all of this.
De Vera also revealed that higher education institutions are now preparing for possible face-to-face classes by January next year once permitted. CHED is scouting around for a facility that might serve as a model on how to apply health protocols while conducting face-to-face classes. CHED issued a show cause order to a school in Isabela province for conducting a face-to-face class in August. A student tested positive for coronavirus while 45 of his direct contacts have been traced. CHED's proposed budget for 2021 amounts to 50.928 billion pesos or an increase of 3 billion pesos from this year. CHED's data shows that 76% out of 112 state colleges and universities have started classes while 21% are scheduled to open in October. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
A lawmaker believes that the trillion-dollar mining industry in the Philippines can help boost the country's economy. Vincent Arboleda will tell us why.
The possible income from the mining industry can pay off all the debts of the Philippines if it can be properly managed. This is what Surigao del Norte's 2nd District Representative Robert H. Barbers revealed in the program Get It Straight with Daniel Razon, something that was confirmed by Mines and Geosciences Bureau Director Attorney Wilfredo Moncano. According to Atty. Moncano, the country's mineral resources amount to around $7 trillion or around 350 trillion pesos. $3 trillion of this estimate comes from metallic minerals like nickel, while around $4 trillion or around 200 trillion pesos comes from the non-metallic minerals like limestone, marble, silica, sand, and gravel. This is more than enough to pay off the more than 9 trillion pesos debt of the country.
Our resources are extensive. Of course, these are still on the ground. Kailangan itong alisin sa ground, minahin, ilabas, i-process para maging produkto siya at maibenta. Unless na gagawin natin, patulugin na natin mga resources sa lupa, hindi yan nagiging contributor to the economy.
But to effectively use the country's resources, some policies must be changed together with responsible mining.
Kung ang kinakatakot lamang po ng ibang sektor, dahil baka masira ang ating environment, why don't we just copy yung best practices all over the world ng mga mining countries na hindi naman nasisira yung kanilang environment, bagkus pinapakinabangan pa ng mga tao.
Representative Barbers also added that the DNR and local governments must also work hand in hand in monitoring mining companies to ensure that they follow all protocols and refrain from abusing nature. Representative Barbers also said he is currently making a bill to amend the Mining Act of the Philippines.
Kung ito'y palalaparin natin at bubuhayin natin sa pamamagitan ng kakaroon ng isang consistent, firm, at responsible mining policy, tingin ko makakainganyo po tayo ng maraming investment.
Meanwhile, Atty. Moncano said the Department of Environment and Natural Resources and the Department of Finance are finalizing a recommendation to the President to lift the moratorium on new mining applications. Vincent Arboleda, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
A recommendation to revise the deployment ban on healthcare workers has been submitted to President Rodrigo Duterte for his final decision. Asher Kadapan Jr. will tell us why.
The Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, or POEA, recommends to revise the policy on the deployment ban on healthcare workers looking to work abroad. This is in response to the clamor of healthcare workers against the deployment ban that has been implemented since April. The deployment ban aims to prevent the worsening of the shortage of healthcare workers in the country severely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The government has initially given an exemption to healthcare workers who have completed their deployment requirements until March 8. But according to Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III, the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases has already approved the recommendation of extending the exemption until August 31. The recommendation has been submitted to President Rodrigo Duterte for his final decision.
POEA recommended the exemption will cover up to August 31, which I favorably supported and submitted to IATF. Now, IATF approved our recommendation and it has been submitted to the President for his final approval.
The Labor Secretary explains that if the President approves the revision, the government will deploy only about 1,200 of them, although they expect a lower turnout because only 900 healthcare workers were allowed for overseas deployment, but only a little over 600 proceeded for the first exemption. Secretary Bello also encourages healthcare workers in the private sector to file a formal complaint about labor exploitation. He said that their investigation into the private sector's abuses against health workers will remain in vain if there's no complainant. Dole appeals to private hospitals to not exploit health workers.
Many of the nurses are working from a minimum of 10 to 12 hours a day. Pagkatapos ang tinatanggap na sweldo is 15,000 to 18,000, way below the rate of our nurses in the public sector. Meron pa nga mga nangyayari dyan, na yung mga nurses, instead of receiving salaries, they are the one paying at the guise of training fee.
The Labor Secretary has asked IATF to initiate a proposal to Congress to upgrade the compensation and benefits of the healthcare workers to also encourage them to stay and work in the country. Asher Kadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
PNP Chief Police General Camilo Cascolan confirms he is looking at appointing Calabarzon Police Director Brigadier General Vicente Danao Jr. as the Chief of the National Capital Region Police Office. Our police correspondent Leia Lagan tells us why.
PNP Chief Police General Camilo Cascolan admits that he wants to promote Police Regional Office 4A or Calabarzon Director, Police Brigadier General Vicente Danao Jr. as the Metro Manila Top Cap. In an interview, General Cascolan said that Danao has performed well in Calabarzon, so he is fit to be the National Capital Region Police Office Chief. Police Brigadier General Danao has sent a message to UNTV saying he will leave the discretion to the appointing authority on where they think he is best fit in the organization. He assures that in whatever capacity, he will always do his best to enforce the law without fear and favor, maintain peace and order, prevent and control crimes, and ensure public safety and internal security with the active support of the community. General Cascolan meanwhile says they are now evaluating NCRPO Chief Police Major General Dibol Sinas because he deserves to be promoted. The PNP chief says that Major General Sinas can be placed in a directorial staff position to utilize his expertise in training and recruitment of personnel.
Training of recruits, HRDD. He could be everywhere. Actually, the ball is also a seasoned officer wherein he experienced a lot of things.
Meanwhile, Cascolan revealed he has cancelled an appointment by former PNP Chief Police General Archie Gamboa. Cascolan refused to name those police officials. A midnight appointment is the last-minute order approved by an official before he steps down from office or before his retirement. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Now here's a glimpse of what's the weather like in parts of the country. Tropical storm Leon maintains its strength as it slightly accelerates over the West Philippine Sea. State Weather Bureau Pag-asa says that as of 3 p.m. today, the center of the storm was located at 215 kilometers west-northwest of Coron, Palawan, with maximum sustained winds of 65 kilometers per hour near the center and gustiness of up to 80 kilometers per hour. Leon will continue to move west-northwestward and may exit the Philippine area of responsibility tomorrow morning. The southwest monsoon enhanced by Leon will bring moderate to heavy rains over Aurora, Palawan including Calamian and Cuyo and Kalayaan Islands, Mindoro provinces, and western Visayas. Meanwhile, light to moderate with at time heavy rains will be experienced over eastern Cagayan, Isabela, Nueva Vizcaya, Quirino, Metro Manila, Calabarzon, Bicol Region, Mindanao, and the rest of Luzon, Mimaropa, and Visayas. Flooding and rain-induced landslide may occur during heavy or prolonged rainfall, especially in areas that are highly susceptible to these hazards. No tropical cyclone wind or cyclone wind signal is currently in effect.
PNP Chief Police General Camilo Cascolan orders all unit commanders to impose a crackdown and surprise inspection on all PNP camps nationwide. Leia Ilagan details why.
PNP Public Information Office Chief Police Colonel Ismael Yu reveals that PNP Chief Police General Camilo Cascolan has ordered the Highway Patrol Group and the Integrity Monitoring and Enforcement Group to lead a nationwide crackdown in order to catch police officers who used evidence and unregistered, impounded, and carnapped vehicle.
The Chief Philippine National Police is national in scope with this directive, so this is automatically national. So everyone from the region should adhere to the mandate of the Chief Philippine National Police.
Colonel Yu adds the PNP chief also warns that cops who will be apprehended for using carnapped vehicles will face administrative charges.
Well, criminal liability still has to be determined, but automatically, since they are member of the Philippine National Police, they will be charged they will be inquired and investigated administratively for the purpose.
This order from Police General Cascolan is in line with their internal cleansing program. For the PNP chief, the police must lead as the good example against crimes and corruption. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And for the news abroad, here's Kath Dumaraos reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand.
Japan's parliament has elected Yoshihide Suga as the country's new prime minister. After winning the leadership of the governing party earlier this week, today's vote confirms the former chief cabinet secretary's new position. The new prime minister is expected to continue his predecessor's policies, being a close ally of Shinzo Abe, who has resigned due to health reasons. Suga has easily won a poll for prime minister in the Diet, Japan's lower house, receiving 314 out of 462 votes. The Thailand government has approved 60 hotels to be part of the quarantine process in the country for travelers from abroad. Joining us tonight is our fellow correspondent here in Thailand, Therese Longbowen, to tell us why live. Therese?
Kath, a total of 8,878 rooms from 60 hotels were approved by the Ministry of Public Health and Ministry of Defense for the Alternative State Quarantine or ASQ. ASQ is a mandatory 14-day quarantine procedure at government-approved hotels, providing facilities and safe environment for those who are entering Thailand, both Thai nationals and foreigners, at their own expense. Tourism Authority of Thailand Governor Yutasak Supason had initially announced the country's plan to reopen its borders to international tourists by the last quarter, as the domestic market alone cannot keep tourism workers employed. As of this day, there are a total of 3,490 COVID-19 cases in Thailand, with 3,316 recoveries, 116 undergoing medical treatments, and 58 deaths. Meanwhile, Kath, visitors to Thailand may also visit tourismthailand.org, which is the official website of Thailand's Tourism Authority, for updates on tourism. This website also offers virtual tours. Here, 10 tourist spots in 9 provinces are just a few clicks away. You can even go from one room to another. So if you wanted to visit places here in Thailand, you may check out this website. That's tourismthailand.org. Kath?
That's a great website formulated by the Tourism Authority of Thailand, especially in our current situation that tourists cannot travel here. For now, they can enjoy the scenic spots in Thailand virtually, and hopefully when the country's borders are fully reopened, they can finally see those places in person. Thank you, Therese Longbowen, for that report. President Trump's image with allied nations of the United States, especially Australia, has plummeted over the past year, a major global survey has found. Joining us tonight is one of our correspondents in Australia, Marvi Delfin, to tell us why live. Marvi?
Yes, people in several of America's allied nations, especially Aussies, are dismayed by President Donald Trump's handling of the COVID-19 crisis and view him as less trustworthy than other world leaders and political figures, according to the survey by the Pew Research Center. Data found that a significant 3 in 4 Australians have no confidence the U.S. chief executive will do the right thing for world affairs, compared to Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Favorability toward the U.S. and Australia, including the UK, Canada, France, and Japan, is the lowest it has been in at least 2 decades, the survey revealed. The driving force behind this drop in support for the US and its president appears to be the country's failure in its COVID-19 response and containment, which has seen the tragic deaths of more than 194,000 Americans and more people infected than anywhere else, according to Johns Hopkins University statistics. By contrast, 94% of Australians said their own country's government had handled the coronavirus pandemic well. Trump's personal ratings nosedived further in the annual index, with survey respondents giving him ratings comparable to the lowest points of former U.S. President George W. Bush's incumbency and remarkably below the highs of Barack Obama's administration. In Barack Obama's final year of presidential tenure, 84% of Australians said they had confidence in him to do the right thing for international matters. In the US, Trump has been unsuccessful in improving his popularity less than 2 months before the election. His approval rating hovers around 40% in most polls, below Obama, Bush, or Clinton at the stage of their re-election bid, and sits on the same level with George W. Bush, who lost his re-election bid. During that time, just 23% of Australians had confidence in George W. Bush during his final year in the office, which was dominated by the beginning of the global financial crisis. Kath?
You mentioned that a vast majority of Aussies say that they are satisfied with the Australian government's COVID-19 pandemic response despite the surge of anti-lockdown protests. Can you briefly describe to us the current coronavirus situation there?
Kath, here in the land down under, Western Australia has reached 5 months without community transmission, and we have seen also great improvement, especially in the lowering number of reported daily cases in the second wave-stricken state of Victoria. Premier Daniel Andrews said in a statement today that for the first time in a long time, we have less than 1,000 active cases across our state. This milestone will see metropolitan Melbourne moving to the second steps of its roadmap out of lockdown. This is very good news for the 60,000 Victorians in the large backlog waiting for surgery, because from September 28, elective surgery will resume to around 75% of usual activity. We are yet to hear on decisions on other restrictions. Kath?
Thank you, Marvy, for that report. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday declared the dawn of a new Middle East as he presided over the signing of 2 historic Middle East diplomatic deals between Israel and 2 Gulf nations. The agreements between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Israel and Bahrain involve the exchanging of ambassadors, establishment of embassies, and cooperation on a range of fronts, including trade, security, and tourism. Trump said the deals known as the Abraham Accords would form the foundation for a comprehensive peace across the entire region.
Today, the world sees that they're choosing cooperation over conflict, friendship over enmity, prosperity over poverty, and hope over despair.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the foreign ministers of the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain signed the accords written in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. In Israel, the walls of the Old City and Jerusalem were lit with the Israeli, American, Emirati, and Bahraini flags. This is the wind of change, according to Prime Minister Netanyahu's spokesperson to the Arab media. With lockdown measures imposed across the globe and travel is limited due to the coronavirus disease, plane cafes in Thailand offer customers a chance to pretend they are in the sky. In the coastal city of Pattaya, Thailand, customers of this plane cafe board a retired commercial airplane and make themselves comfy in first-class style seats. Passengers enter with a boarding pass and can even go to the cockpit to pretend they are plane pilots. Meanwhile, for those who miss airplane food, Thai Airways opened a restaurant in its headquarters in Bangkok for customers to have an in-flight dining experience. International dishes are prepared by Michelin star chefs and are served in disposable trays by cabin crew. You have to climb an air stair to get to the restaurant, and it also features a first-class section seating to mimic the feeling of actually being on a plane. And those are the reasons behind the news here in Thailand and in other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you, Kath Dumaraos, reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand.
And those are the reasons behind the news, September 16, 2020. Sitting in for Hardin Delgado, I am Mariel Latoza reporting from Perth, Australia.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people, we give glory to God.